Write an equation given ... Yes, yes, you may. All right, number 1. Okay, before we do number 1, just remember what we know about an ellipse. Vertices and foci always lie on the what axis? It has a special name. The major axis. The vertices are always the 2 points that are the closest or furthest apart? Furthest. Foci are always inside or outside the vertices? Inside. So here's your vertices, it's inside. All right. With that being said, number 1, V4 vertices are 0, plus or minus 8. I should have 2 points for my vertices. Are those 2 points in disguise? Yes. All right. Foci is 0, plus or minus 4. All right. It didn't say sketch, but we are at least going to sketch just the points to figure out where my major axis is and what's going on. All right, so 0, 4. I'm actually not going to put all my points. I'm just going to put 4 and 8. Are you guys okay with that? Yeah. -4, -8. Which one do I use the star for? The foci, and that's this one, or foci if you want to say foci, and then here and here. Which way is the major axis running, up and down or right and left? Up and down, because the vertices and foci are always on the major axis. All right, x, we need the vertex, or the center. We need the center in order to write the equation. We know it's going to equal 1. What do we know about the center? It's right in the middle, right? In this case, it's right at the what? The 0, 0. So the center is 0, 0. That wasn't given information, but can we figure that out? All right, so what do I have here if it's going to be x minus h squared and y minus k squared? What do I have? X squared and y squared. All right. I'm going to put lightly here a squared and b squared. I'm putting it lightly because I will erase. So I'm telling you that because some of you are writing in pen. How do I find a so that I could square it and put the a squared down here? What is the a or what is the b? How do we find either one of those? Or I guess we haven't found them before, but when we were given them before, what did we do with them? So here a was 3 and b was 2. What did I do with these numbers? I square rooted them before. They were 9 and 4. I square rooted them, and it told me the directions or how far to move, right and left or up and down. Which one was right and left, the A or the B? Not the bigger one, but the one underneath the X, and the one up and down was the one underneath the Y, right? So if I come to this picture here and I can see I moved right and left 3, that means A is 3, which means this is 9. Do you agree? If I have this picture and I say, oh, I can see I moved up and down 2, that means B is 2 and B squared is 4. Yes? Okay, with that being said, can I tell how far I'm moving up and down? And do I count to the stars or to the vertices? The vertices, the dots. How far up and down? Not total distance, just how far up or down did I move? 8. So what is it that equals 8? Is that going to be the A or the B? How do I know it's B? How did you guys know it was B? Up and down. Up and down is the Y. So if B is 8, what am I going to put underneath the Y? 64. All right, questions so far? Okay, what's the last thing we have left to find? A. Remember how we found A before, and A being the leading coefficient for your parabolas? Do you guys remember how we found them? Like here, what did we use? We used our formula, yes? And there is one correction, and I apologize for this. If you want to leave it the way I had it in notes on, what was the day? Tuesday. That is fine. I have to find it right here. If you can flip over to yesterday's notes really quick. I called it F, but I am going to be calling it C from now on, so if you can make that change really quick. This was Tuesday's lesson. I had F squared equals, where I am going to be using C squared, and I believe that's what you guys used last year, right? Okay, so I'm going to keep it as consistent as I can. So focal length is C squared. I had F squared. C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So eccentricity is C over A or C over B, not F. This is 11.4. This was Tuesday's lesson. All right. So do you agree this formula right here is what I'm going to use to find my B? Yes? Now, what do I not want to have to deal with? It's better if I do not have to deal with the absolute value. All right. What can I do to make sure that I don't need the absolute value? What can I do when I'm subtracting to make sure that I don't need an absolute value? Good job. Put the bigger number first. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Now, do we have enough information here to know which one's going to be bigger, the A squared or the B squared? Yes. How do we know, which one did you say? How do we know the B squared is going to be bigger? Because the foci and the vertices lie on the what axis? Major, which means it's the furthest apart, so B is the biggest. Yes or no? All right, so when you plug in your formula, C squared equals, if you do B squared minus A squared instead of A squared minus B squared, is that okay? All right, it's coming because it's big minus small. If you can remember that, then you won't have to use the absolute value. I'm going to have you guys plug in. Do we know the C? I'm going to write that up here. C is the focal length. It's the distance from the center to the what? Focus. Either one. What's that length? 4. Okay. I'm going to have you plug it in and do it now. All right, did you guys find a value? Okay, so what did you plug in for C? 4 squared equals B is 8 squared minus A squared. So what is that? 16 equals 64 minus A squared. When you subtract the 64, do you end up with a negative number? Oh no, it's negative, but is that negative going to cancel out when you divide by the negative 1? Yeah, so do you see, as long as if you make sure the big one goes first, you'll never have to worry about the absolute value. The negatives will always cancel themselves out. So what does, what does A squared equal? All right, anyone know what I do next? Square root both sides? Do we all agree? Do we have to? What am I looking for? A here or A squared? A squared. So what is A squared? 48. So if you did, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. You're just going to take more steps. So here you could write A equals the square root of 48 and not have to simplify it, because when you write it here, you are going to square it. Does that make sense? Because if you did square root, you'd get a equals root 48, which is really not needed. All right, questions on that one? That's your answer. Okay, number 2. Foci is plus or minus 2 comma 0. And the major axis length equals 6. What do I put at the plus or minus 2, 0? Stars or points? Okay. The major axis length is 6. Do I have enough information to know if my major axis is going up and down or right and left? Yeah. Do I? I do. How do I know? Because what? It's okay. I'm going to ask you this then. Is my major axis going right and left or up and down? What was that? Right and left. How do we know it's going right and left?
The focal things are on the major axis.
The foci, the focal things, he said the foci are on the major axis. So if the foci are running right and left, should the major axis be running right and left?
Yeah.
Yes. Now the major axis length is 6. That means from one endpoint to the other is 6. So that means I would go right how far in each direction? Do you agree to be right 3, left 3? Yes or no? All right. Questions? Oh, what's the center? I'm going to have you guys do that right now. 0, 0? All right. So are we going to have another x squared and y squared without any parentheses? Okay. Yes?
How did you get the major axis?
This was given to us. And then we use that and cut it in half because major axis length means from one vertex to the other. So if it's 6, that means from the center I went right 3 and left 3. If this was 8, I would go right 4 and left 4. And whatever it is, I would cut in half and go right and left that length. All right. Which letter, if this is running right and left, which letter do I know, the A or the B? A. And A is the length from the center and how far right and left I went to the vertices. And how far right and left did I go? 3. So where do I put the 9 over here? Because this is moving right and left. Do you agree? Now, can we use the same formula we did before? Yes? Don't forget you're going to do the big minus the small. Which one's bigger, the A squared or the B squared? How do we know the A squared is bigger? Because it's the major axis. So 9 minus B squared. What am I going to plug in for? What is C? I'm running out of room. C is, and this is the center C, and this is the focal length C. It equals 2. Do you guys see how Gabe got 2? All right. What is focal length? The distance, the length from your center to either foci. And what's the length from the center to either foci? Can you guys see how he got 2? All right, go ahead and solve that. I'm just plug this in as 3 squared. And let you guys work it out. Don't forget, you do not have to square root at the end. Once you divide by the negative, do you get b squared equals 5? Yes. Do I have to square root both sides? No, because b squared goes here, which is 5. Questions? All right.
Are we always going to work with the denominator?
When they're ellipses, writing them in standard form, yes. F is 0, 0 and 0, 4. And the major axis equals 8. Okay, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and start that now. We have enough information to work that one out on your own. Put your phones away, you're working. Does everyone have this down? Because I am going to move it to give you time to work. Not yet? So you do have to plot your points first to figure out which way your major axis is running. You do have to do that. Can you guys tell me which way the major axis is running? Up and down, or right and left? Not sure? And I gave you guys the wrong point, but we're going to use it. 0, 4, 1, 2, 3. All right, how do we know the major axis is running up and down? The foci? Yes or no? All right. Do you have enough to know your center? How do I find the center? We can use the midpoint formula or just count your way in. It's up to you. Midpoint, you add your x's together, cut them in half. You add your y's together and cut them in half. What do we get? Center equals 0, 2. I'll write that down here. Center equals 0, 2. So when I do this, it's going to be x squared plus parentheses y what? Minus 2. Quantity squared. All right, keep going. You have enough to know how far up and down you're moving, right? From the center. If the center is 0, 2 and your major axis length is 8, how far up and down are you moving? Anyone? If your center, you know your center is 0, 2 and you know your major axis is 8, how far up and down are you moving from the center? 4. All right, so go ahead and do that now. And again, you always move up and down from the center, not the origin, unless your center is at the origin. All right, that's what I have so far. Do you guys agree? Okay. If I moved up and down 4 is the A or the B? A? Up and down is X or Y? Y, and Y is with the B?
Yeah.
So B is 4, yes or no?
Yeah.
So under here goes the 16. Does that make sense? All right, again, how do we know that? From the center, I know I went up and down 4, and up and down is the Y value, so 4 squared goes under the Y. All right, put phones away. Okay, so C squared equals big minus small. Which one's going to be bigger, the B squared or the A squared? The B squared, because that's the major axis, yes? All right, so C is what? C is the length from your center to your foci, to either focus. Is your focal length 2? All right, so go ahead and do it. 2 squared equals 4 squared minus A squared. Anyone have it? What does A squared equal? 12. Okay, questions? Yes.
Can you explain how you got your center?
How we got the center? Okay, can anyone, the center being right here. Can anybody tell us how you found the center to be 0, 2? Anyone explain? It's, okay, so it's in the middle of both these foci here, right? So you either count your way in or you use the midpoint formula. 0 plus 0 divide by 2, 0 plus 4 divide by 2. And the center is 0, 2. Yes?
I get confused on the major axis, like the major axis equals 8,
Mhm.
and you say like cut in half.
Yeah, major axis is not always going to be up and down, or it's not always going to be right and left, but it will always go in the same direction as your foci. So since the foci were up and down, the major axis is up and down. The length, when they give it to you, is always from one endpoint to the other. So if it's 8, from the center, I would have to have gone up 4 and down 4 to make this total length 8. So let's say it was 10, I would have gone up 5 and down 5 to make the total length 10. So your focal length, you always cut in half, and from the center move up and down that length, or right and left if your major axis is horizontal, to make that total length equal the major axis.
And then for the major axis, basically helps you find your vertices.
The major axis helps you find the B in this case, because if the major axis is 8, that means the B is 4, because from the center I went up 4 and down 4. That's how I found the B. Same thing over here. The major axis was 6, which means A was 3, because I went right 3 and left 3. Okay, so the major axis helps you find either A or B depending on which way your major axis is. Make sense? All right, we have one last one and then we are done. Oh, stop. Well, I don't have to do this one. It is a harder one. Stop. 0.
We're all gonna forget how to do it.
Such little faith you have in yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ow.
You're going to be what?
I'm gonna watch this math notes every single day.
Good for you, Musa. All right.
All on video. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Vertices are 0 plus or minus 8. I'm just going to put the 8 there and the negative 8 there. And they're vertices, so they're dots. Do we agree? All right. With just that, do you have enough to find your center? Yes? Okay, go ahead and find it. What's your center? Center is at the origin. Do we agree? Right, because you go right down here. All right, major axis is up and down or right and left? Up and down, because it follows the vertices or the foci, either one. All right, they didn't give us like the major axis length like they did on the other ones, or the foci like they did on number 1. They gave foci and vertices. They gave us the eccentricity. Okay, now let's start with this. X squared and then plus y squared equals 1. I know at least one of these values. Do I know the value underneath the x squared or underneath the y squared?
Y squared.
Okay, why is it the y squared value that I know? Because I'm moving
Up and down.
up and down. Do you see that? Okay, how far up and down did I move from the center? 16 is the length between both of them, but how far up and then how far down? 8. And up and down is A or B? B is 8.
So it's gonna be 64.
So 64 goes under which one? All right. Now, usually I have C to find A. Can I find A with just B by itself? No. So I need to know C. What do we know about eccentricity's formula?
There's a C.
There's a C in there. You are correct. Okay. So eccentricity is your focal length over A or B, depending on which one is bigger. Do you guys remember that? It's C over A or C over B, C being your focal length. All right, we don't know our focal length, we know our eccentricity, and is A or B bigger in this case? B. How do we know B is bigger? Because it is the major axis, because that's where the vertices are. Yes or no? Got it? So what do we plug for eccentricity? What do we plug in? What do we plug in for C? Nothing, we don't know it. What do we plug in for B? 8. Do your cross multiplying, or however you solve, multiply by 8 and then 2.
Can we just, I mean, like, it's 4, so can we just cut the 8 in half? Or
Yes. Well,
from the beginning, I'm talking about
To
from the
B,
beginning.
for B,
Or,
because you can cut it in half before.
yes, but foci is not always just cut in half. It's equidistance, but it could be like right here at 7 and -7, or at 5 and -5. We don't know that it's always right in the middle. That's not always,
oh,
yeah?
okay.
All right, so cross multiply, what do you get for C? Equals 4. So now can we use that to find the A squared? C squared equals big minus small. Which one's bigger in this case, the A squared or the B squared? The B is bigger, yes? So 8 squared minus A squared equals 4 squared. Go ahead and solve. Subtract, get rid of your negative. Tell me once you have your A squared. What is it? Do I have to square root?
No.
No, 48. Any questions?